Hi, good afternoon to each and everyone. My name is Christian San Luce de Gandang, and I am your reporter for this subject, the survey of Afro-Asian literature. So the topic for this afternoon is all about the Indonesian literature. So Indonesian literature is located at Southeast Asian archipelago between the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. Indonesia has an estimated 17,508 islands, but only 6,000 islands are inhabited. So it comprises five main islands. The first one is the Sumatra, Kalimantan, Sulawesi, Java, and the Papua. So Indonesians are a mix of Chinese, European, Indian, and Malay. Diversity is a central feature of the Indonesian culture. So there are some periods of Indonesian literature. The first one is the Punjanga Lama, or the literates of olden times. The Punjanga Lama, or the oldest poets, was written before the 20th century, and a lively oral tradition using traditional Malay language literature. So state here the genre. The traditional forms dominated in written poetry and the prose. So the hikayat is the stories, fairy tales, animals, fables, and the chronicles. There are some examples of the Sayar, Phanton, Babad, or the Girandan. And the next one is the Satra Malayo Lama, or the older Malay literature. The Satra is the work from this period were predominantly popular among the people in Sumatra, the Chinese, and the Indo-Europeans, year 1870 to 1942. The first work were dominated by the Siyar, Hikayat, and the translation of the Western novels. And the third one is the Angkatan Balai Pustaka, or the generation of the Colonial Office for Popular Literature from 1908. So national consciousness emerged among educated Indonesians. So Balai Pustaka is a Dutch government supervised publisher. In 1928, Bahasa Indonesia, or Indonesian language, is proclaimed a national language, or one people, one nation, and the one language. And the fourth one is the Angkatan Pujanga Baru, or the New Literates 1933. So state here the national consciousness among young Indonesian intellectuals was well developed. Angkatan Pujanga Baru is the first national literary magazine was created, and it is the first literary periodical in the national language, and occasionally included prose in the English, and more regularly, and perhaps understandability, prose and poetry in the Dutch. And the fifth one is the Angkatan 1945, the generation of 1945. It is dominated by the truths of the independence and political manner. So the next one is the Angkatan 1950 to 1960, the generation of 1950s. So it is characterized by the Kisan magazine and established by H.B. Hazin. It also dominated by the collection of the short stories and poetry. So the seventh one is the Angkatan 1966 to 1970, the generation of 1966 into the 1970s. So this Angkatan 1966 to 1970 is Rising the Horizon magazine, led by the Machar Lavis, and the sense of the writers previously associated with the lecture of repressed groups went into exile overseas. And the next is the Angkatan 1980, or the decade. So It is dominated by the romance novel poets expound ideas such as the femininity. So here in Angkatan or Decade is the Lapus is a popular story written by the Hilman Hiwarayan. So the next one is the Angkatan Reformasi or the post Suharto Reformation period. So the famous work of Ismail Marahimi is The War is Over, year 1977. So it is a set of Indonesian following the Japanese invasion. This book was awarded the Pegasus Prize for the literature in 1984. And the last one is the Angkatan 2000 or the generation year 2000s. So Dil Dilistavi is the one of the front runners in the modern Indonesian book scene as an author. She has published 9 books including the highly anticipated Supremacy series. So there are a famous works here. The first one is the Ika Kurniawan. So the first Indonesian writer nominated for the Booker International Prize for his novel The Man Tiger, translated by the Lavodili Sembering. So the Man Tiger with its main character possessed by the spirit of a white tiger has elements that UK readers will most readily recognize from the Latin American magical realism. So Ayu Utami wrote the most talked about book, and also Saman that dealt with subjects that until that time had been taboo: political repression, prejudice towards the Chinese, and the premarital sex. And the next one is the Sastrawangi. So the Indonesian sexy feminist literary movement or the fragrant literature. So first new trend in Indonesian literature, other writers are Dewi Lestari, Fira Basuki, and the Henner Misa Ayu. So the next is the Raisa Apandi. So just 11 years old when she wrote her first novel, Mimi Bo and the Missing Diary. So the next one is the cyber literature. The Sastra Chong Sapa is also known the Dubsteen literature. So the literature is a subversive act. It is a medium of chance. It promotes social responsibility and social consciousness. So now let's proceed to the folktale. So before we start, there is a quote here that states everybody has his burden, but the heaviest burden is for the small and the low. So the folktale is titled by Everybody Has a Burden as an Indonesian folktale. So the character of the folktale is the first one is roots, trunks, leaves, fruits. So one day, once there was a mango tree. It had many large branches which gave generous shade and before many luscious fruits. Every day who saw the fine yield of fruit admired the tree and wishes they owned a tree like it. One day, a complaining voice was heard right at the bottom of the tree. For me, what a burden I have to bear. I've got to carry such a load. The heavy trunk, all the hedge branches, all the leaves and fruit, so heavy is my load that I'm buried alive in the soil. When the trunk heard this sullen outburst, he answered, "My dear brother, don't talk like that. Do you really think I have a nice life? You don't know I have to bear to weight of those great branches, and all the load of the fruit on me. I am always frightened when there is a hard whirlwind shaking my body. The whirlwind turns and twists my body so badly. You don't know how it hurts. I am fortunate if I don't break into two. If I do, then everything is finished. The gambling of the trunk was heard by the leaves. They pitied to hear these words is envy about themselves, so they said creepily, "How sad are we to hear you both talking like that. How ungrateful you both are. Isn't it we who protect you from the burning rays of the sun? And what about the rainy season? How can you say that we have a nice life? It's the fruit who have a nice life, hanging and swinging all day. It is the fruit that counts of everybody." The fruits were saddened to hear this talk. They said in a silky voice, "My dear brothers and sisters, how sad are we to hear your words. It is from the truth of we actually feel and what we have to face every time. We are the most to be pitied." Stop talking," the road said harshly. "Again, no need to talk anymore. All of you depend on me, and I don't exist. All of you will not be there. So it must be among people to say, the buttocks, think what others feel before you take a step. The true balance of the democracy is when the leaves, fruit, trunk, and the roots are all taken into the picture." So the conflict of our folktale is the man versus man. And that's all. And again, good afternoon.